Hey everyone, it's Dina and welcome back. In today's tutorial, I'm excited to show you how I'm going to make my Catch the Tiger necklace from items from the Tiger's Eye collection that was released by Gemstone Orphanage. We'll be using a beautiful combination of the 4mm, 6mm, and 8mm Tiger's Eye gemstones, and we'll pair it with my Oki 11O seed beads. I'll walk you through how to use the netting stitch to create the stunning gemstone centerpiece. Then we'll switch to the peyote stitch to finish out the rope portion of the necklace. So gather up those supplies that are listed on the page that's coming up and in the description box below. Meet me back with your bead on it board and we'll get started. So the first step is that we're going to have to figure out how many beads on either side of our 8mm gemstones that's going to be in the center of our necklace, how many of the 6 and the 4s that we're going to need. So the stitch itself, the netting stitch that I'm going to do today, we're going to do it in a set of 3s. So we're going to have 3 beads that we're going to add on either side. So the easiest thing to do would be to take your strands of your 4mm and your 6mm. I would probably do it one at a time. So take your 4mm beads, go ahead and take them off the strand, lay them out on your bead mat, and then put 3 of them off to the side on the left, put another 3 off to the right. Then keep doing that, 3 and 3 and 3 and 3, until you have an even amount of beads on either side of your mat. So that way you know, okay, I'm going to be using this amount of beads on the left side of the necklace and this amount of beads on the right side. With my counts on the strand of beads that I got, I have a total of 15 beads that I'm going to be using on the left and on the right. So it's going to be 5 rows of 3 of the 4mm. I'm going to have 12 beads of the 6mm, so 4 rows of 3 of the 6mm. And then on my 8mm, I ended up with just 2 beads left over, so I think it ends up being, I already have half of it sitting here, so I'll have 6 rows. So this part right here was just my sample. I'll end up taking this apart and using it in the necklace itself because it was a sample, so I've got different counts of beads and all sorts of stuff in there right now. But I'll take that apart and use these beads as well. So that's the first thing that you'll need to do is get your beads situated out and see how many that you're going to be using. Go ahead and get out your 11s of your 2 different colors that you're going to use. You're going to have one that's going to be the core beads, the one that you're going to see the most. And then you're going to have what we're going to call either the crossover or the point beads here in the center. You can see that the champagne color is the ones that I'm using for the one in the center. And you can totally flip these if you wanted to. If you want to use the champagne as more the bead color that you'll see more of, and then use the cream color as your crossover or your point beads, then go ahead and do that, whichever one you want to do. So go ahead and get your beads separated and get your 11Os out and then meet me back and we'll start with the first step of the netting stitch. Alright, so let's get started with the netting stitch. Now I have a arm or a wingspan worth of thread on my needle. You're going to end up adding thread, so just put a comfortable length on your needle right now that you're comfortable with. And then somewhere in the middle of this I'll show you how to add thread if you're not familiar with it. So let's start with the netting stitch. The netting stitch, we're going to start with adding a gemstone, one of your step-up beads or corner beads or something of that sort. I'm probably going to call it several different things. And then add another gemstone and then another seed bead until you have 3 gemstones and 3 seed beads on your needle. Go ahead and pull that down to the end of the thread. Leave a comfortable amount to where you can hold on to, and then also add thread to at the end of this so we can come back and do our peyote stitch for the rest of the rope. So now, whoops, pulled on it too far. Now we're going to go straight back through these beads one more time to create a circle and also get a second strand of thread through our gemstones. If you're not familiar with my tutorials, I like to put at least two strands of thread through items that I make a lot of times. I do that quite frequently. So it's something that you don't have to do, but for me, it just kind of makes a little bit more of peace of mind for me. And what we're going to end up doing now is just go through the gemstone and the next seed bead. That's just to get away from the stop thread, or the starter thread. So that way you have the starter thread coming out of the left hand of that gemstone, and then now your working thread is coming out of the seed bead in between the first two gemstones. So now we're going to create the bridge part, or the netting part. To do that, we're going to add 3 of our seed bead color that we're going to see the most of. We're going to add 1 of the step-up beads, is what I'm going to call them, quarter beads. Then 3 more of our netting color. We're coming out of that first gold step-up bead, and then we're going to jump over to the next one. And then when you pull that down, you just want to make sure that your beads kind of sit sort of on top of the gemstone. This first round or so, they may sit around the edge, which is perfectly fine, because we'll make that, it'll end up sitting up straight here in a minute. So our next thing, we're going to add our 3 seed beads, our 3 netting beads, 1 of the step-up beads, and 3 more netting beads. Go through the next gold one, and then do that one more time by going back through the first gold seed bead that we were first coming out of. So 1, 2, 3, 1 of the step-ups, and then 1, 2, and 3. And then we're going to proceed through that first gold seed bead that we were coming out of. Now, well, I'm trying to go through the one bead. There we go, just in case you're not familiar with it, so you can see where my thread paths are. Alright, so I'm coming out of that first gold seed bead. Now we need to get to the middle gold seed bead that we just added in that netting stitch. That's why I'm calling it the step-up bead, because that is where you're going to quote-unquote step up to the next round. So now we're going to go through that bead right there. And then this one, if you want to, you can pinch them up like this, your netting stitch. Might make it a little bit easier to get your gemstones in. All you do on this one is you just pick up a gemstone, you go through the next gold step-up bead in the center of that netting, and you do that 2 more times. Just make sure your beads stay up the top. That one wanted to flip to the back. And then add your second one, and then add your third one. And then, like I said in the beginning, I like to put two thread paths through my gemstones. So I'm going to go back through these beads one more time. So I went through the first one already, and it kind of helps to kind of tighten it up some too if you're kind of loose. And then number 2. And then going back through number 3, and I'm just going to come out of that gold seed bead again. And then this is where you add your next row of netting. So I'll do it one more time. So 3 of your netting, 1 of your step up, and 3 of your netting. We're coming out of that gold seed bead right here on the right hand side. We're going to go to this one that's over here on the left. And then 3 more of your netting, 1 of your step ups, 3 more of the netting. Go through the next gold seed bead that's sitting there in between the next 2 gemstones. Then 3 of your netting, 1 of your gold. I'm getting these off camera because I did not get enough of my nettings out. And then 3 more of your netting, and then go back through that gold seed bead again, the first one that we were coming out of. And then now this looks like the step where you're going to have to step up to your next gold seed bead, and then now you're set up to start adding your next round of gemstones again. So that's what you'll end up doing for the first part. Once you add your 5th row of your 4mm, come back and see me because the counts are going to change. We're going to increase the counts before we do that next netting stitch, so that way it gives it gives the netting enough room to be able to hold a bigger bead. So go ahead and add your 5 rows of your 4mm gemstones. Meet me back, and then I'll show you that next count to be able to get to the 6mm. See you back in a second. Okay, so now that you have your 5 rows of your netting stitch done, you can count them by 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So now we have the 5 rows. I'm coming out of the step-up bead, or the gold bead, in between the 2 4mm. So now we're going to have to get ready to add our 6mm. So it's done, the netting stitch is done the exact way as what we just already did here. We're just going to increase the amount of the cream beads, or the netting beads. So the count on that one is going to be 4 now instead of 3. So we add 4 of the netting, 1 of the step-up beads, and then 4 more of the netting. We're coming out of that gold bead, we're going to go through the next one. And you're going to have quite a bit of more room on this one because we're making room to be able to sit that 6mm bead on top of the 4mm. So go ahead and go around, adding the 4, the 1, and then the 4. And then coming out of the gold bead, go through the next gold bead in line, in between the gemstones, then add your last netting portion, gold bead, and then 4 more, and then proceed through the first one again. And then if you can, go ahead and step up to your first gold step-up bead that we just added, and then this part is exactly like the other part. Just pick up a 6mm bead this time. Coming out of that 1 step-up gold bead, go through the next one in line. And then do that 2 more times. And we'll have this portion complete. And then we're going to put a total of 4 rows of the 6mm beads on the netting stitch this time. So now that I got my 6mm beads in there, and see how you can see that there's not that much of a gap there now in between the 4s and the 6s. So go ahead and add your 4 rows of your 6s. When you get to this portion at the end of the 4th row, come back and I'll show you the next counting in order to go from the 6 to the 8mm. Be back in a second. Alright, so now we've got our 6mm on. So we've got the 5 rows of the 4s and 4 rows of the 6. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4. So your new count to add your 8mm is going to be 6 of your netting color. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Add 1 of the step-up golds, and then add 6 more. 1, 4, 5, 6. I think that was 6. Yep. Okay, so 6, 1, and 6, and then same thing, just go through the next gold seed bead, and that was kind of out of focus, sorry, and then add 6, 6, 1, and 6, and go through the next one, and then add your last one. So when we get done with adding the 8mm, there will be a little bit of a change when we're going to be downgrading to the 6mm. Instead of decreasing the count, which is what you would think you would do, we're going to continue with the larger count because we're going to have a bigger bead sitting there, and we want to make sure that our netting stitch is going to go around the bigger bead in a nice fashion. So I'm talking while I'm doing this so you're not just watching me count and everything, but this is just the same way. So once you get done with adding your 6, I think it was 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, yeah, 6 rows of your 8mm beads, at the end of that row, then you'll want to do another netting stitch of the 6, 1, and 6 again, Then you add your 6mm bead. So if somebody is not understanding exactly what I'm talking about, I will come back and I will show you just quickly what I mean by that at the end of me adding the 6 rows of the 8mm. So I'll see you back in a second and I will show you what I mean. Alright, so for anyone that was a little confused on what I was talking about, I have all of my 8mm beads added to it. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 rows of it. And what I'm talking about is we're now going to be downgrading from the 8mm to the 6mm. But we don't want to change to the 6mm size because we need to make the netting to go around the 8mm first. So that's what I was talking about. So this is when we're downgrading, we're going to add the same amount of beads that we added around the current bead when we downgrade to the next one. So that's what I was saying. So we add the 6 plus the 1 and then the 6 again. And look at that, I had just right amount of beads out there. And then go ahead and go through your next 11-0. If you haven't noticed, I started beading in a different direction because I tied on thread in here and ended up tying it on in a different way, and I started beading in a different direction. Doesn't matter, it's still going to work out the same way. And if you haven't noticed also, I have went ahead and completed, I'm pretty sure this is going to be the length that I'm going to need for the peyote stitch on the one side, and I only did that because I am a baseball fan and my baseball team was playing, and it was a pitcher that hasn't pitched in 2.5 years, so I wanted to see him pitch. So I went ahead and started working on this while I was watching the game and everything, and got that done. So I'll show you here in just a few minutes, or a few seconds for you, but a few minutes for me on how to add that. So I'm going to complete the other half of the pin, or this middle portion of the necklace. Then I will come back and I will show you how to do the peyote stitch. I'm getting kind of short on thread too, so I might come back in between that and show you how to add thread just in case you don't know how to do that. So I'll see you back in a few seconds. Alright, so here's the thread addition, just in case if you are not familiar on how to add your thread when you're doing a bead weaving project. So I've left my needle on the current thread that's down to just about nothing, and then I've got the new piece of thread here in my hand. So I'm going to wrap the new piece of thread around the old one, and I'm just going to tie just a simple knot. Just like that. Now I'm going to put the shorter end of the new piece of thread in my left hand. I'm going to hold on to the old piece of thread on my right hand, and I'm going to pull down. Then that brings the knot down here to the gold seed bead. Now I'm going to tie the two short ends together. So I'm going to make a loop to where my new short end is still over here on the left. It's going to wrap around that loop and go through. It's going to wrap around the thread, go through the loop towards me once, and I'm going to pull down and pull tight. Then I'm going to do another loop to where it's going to wrap around the thread and then go through the loop away from me. And then that gets your little square knot. Now I'm going to take the new needle, or the needle off the old thread, and then I'll add it to the end of the new thread. Then what I typically do is go ahead and complete my new, whatever stage I'm in, whatever stitch it is. And then once that, I should be showing you how to do this too. Okay, let me do that real quick. So this is how you add thread to your needle too, if you're not familiar with it. I use a pair of pliers, either flat nose or needle nose, and I just squish the very end of the thread with the pliers, and I'm going to zoom out just a little bit because I'm really close and it's really hard to see. Okay, now it's kind of focusing a little bit better. And then you just take that end and you put it through the eye of the needle, but you want to thread. You're basically threading the needle. So you're moving the needle to the thread rather than trying to push the thread through the needle. And I had it that first time, but then I lost it. So now I've got it on there. And then I just pull it through after that. And then one other little beading tip that I probably should have mentioned at the very beginning is when you're pulling your thread through these beads, sometimes you get in a habit of trying to pull your thread with the needle, like you hold on to the needle itself. Try not to do that. Try to get the needle through the bead itself, but then grab on to part of the thread down here and continue to pull through. The reason for that is you can actually bend your needle. Oh man, I can't get it to focus right. But this little needle, the tip of the needle down here, is so bent that there's no way that I can get thread through that eye of that needle again. So this was the original needle that I started off with. And so, yeah, you might be able to see that. I'm looking at the little itty bitty small screen on my camera, so it's really hard to tell if you can actually see it. But it is so bent that there's no way that I can get thread through that again. So that needle is gone and cannot be used. So definitely when you're pulling through your beads, don't pull on the needle itself. Try to pull through the bead and then continue to pull by pulling on the thread itself. Alright, so I will meet you back in a second and I will have this part of it done and then we'll start working on the peyote stitch. Meet you back. So we're down to the end of the gemstone portion of the necklace. So it's looking pretty cool just with this little part right here that you have done already. And we're going to start on the peyote stitch. So to get that started, you need to go ahead and complete your last row of your netting stitch. So you need to make sure that you have that completed before you start the peyote. Now with the peyote, we're going to start with one row of gold, and it's essentially going to count these gold beads as your first row, essentially. So I'm going to pick up a gold. I'm coming out of one of the golds here. I'm going to go to the next golden line and go through that one. And then I'm going to pick up a second gold, go through the next gold in the netting stitch, and then pick up a third one, and then go through that first gold of the netting stitch. And then when you pull that tight, it seems kind of loose right now, it'll get tighter, just like that. Oops, can't see that. Come on, focus. Here we go. So you have your 3 netting beads here on the edge, and then these are your 3 peyote stitch beads. So now that we have that completed, we need to step up. So go through that first gold bead that we just added, and then that's your stepping up. Now we're going to add 6 rows of our cream colored beads. So you pick up a bead, making sure I'm making sure I'm in focus. So you pick up a bead, we're coming out of this bead right here. So this one right here. This is our next bead that we need to go into. This one right here. And then when you put that on your thread, then it makes the cream bead stick out like that. So now that becomes your sticky outy bead. So pick up another cream bead. You're coming out of this one right here. The next one to go into is going to be this one right here. And then when you go through that, that creates a second sticky outy bead. Pick up the third one. You're coming out of this one right here. Come on, guy, focus. There we go. We're coming out of this one right here. And then we go back through the first one that we started out in, which is that one right there. And then now you have another row of your peyote complete. Next step is you have to step up so you can continue on with the rope fashion. So go through your first cream bead that you added. Pick up a cream bead. And now they're starting to kind of stick out a little bit easier, so you can kind of see them a little bit better. So we're coming out of this cream bead right here. We need to go through this one, which is the next one in line. And then pick up another cream bead. We're coming out of this one. We want to go through the second one. And I'm twisting this in my hands as I'm going, just to make it easier for me to complete the stitch. Coming out of this one right here, we need to go through the one that we originally started to come out of. And that's your next row of peyote complete. Now don't forget, you have to step up to go through that first bead again. Now if this is confusing and you can't figure out which beads to go into, you can always alternate. You can go one row of gold and then a row of cream, a row of gold, and so on and so forth. What I'm going to end up doing is what I did down here. I had 2 rows of gold, which the first row was the peak bead, or that step-up bead of the netting stitch. Then I added the 1 row of peyote in the gold. And then how you count your rows of your peyote is you can go down the side like this. And see how I have 3 rows, or 3 beads, in between my 2 golds that are sitting here? And then when you move over one like that, there's still 3 beads of your cream and then your gold. So this is actually 6 rows of peyote. You have row 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So I did basically 2 rows of the gold, 6 of the cream, 2 rows of gold again, and then I increased it to 8 of the cream. Then I did 2 rows of gold, and then I did 12 rows of cream, and then I did 2 gold again, and then I completed the rest of it until I got to the length that I wanted. And I'll tell you exactly how many rows that is after I get this done, because I'm not quite sure if this is the actual length that I want, or if I want to add on a little bit more. I still have thread on my end just in case I want to add some more to it. But I just did this little portion right here to kind of emulate, you know, the stripes of in a tiger's skin or a tiger's fur and stuff like that. Just something extra to do. You don't have to do that if you don't want to. Or like I said, if it's confusing, you can always go either or. You can always have a row of gold and a row of cream, row of gold, row of cream. Especially when you're starting out, that might be easier for you to do. So go ahead and complete that portion to the length that you want. And like I said, when I come back, I will tell you how many rows exactly that I did of the peyote if you would like to follow along. So for me, it'll be about an hour or so of work, maybe a little bit more because it's getting close to dinner time. And then for you, I'll be back in a few seconds and I'll continue on. Alright, so it's been about an hour and a half, 2 hours, somewhere around in there, and I've got my 2 sides of my necklace done. So I ended up doing a total of 127 rows of peyote. And that was starting with that first round of the gold that we added on the end. So it's not counting the point beads or the step-up beads that we used in the this portion of the necklace. So 127 peyote stitches, or rows of peyote, to complete the necklace. And it's going to be around an 18-inch, somewhere between an 18 and a 19-inch. I'm also going to add a little bit of an extender chain on it too. I like to use extender chains on necklaces because sometimes people don't like them at a certain length, and then they have options to be able to make it a little longer if they wanted to. So now we're going to add our wire guard. So we're at the very end of the peyote stitch, and what we'll end up doing is we're just going to go through those last 3 beads that we added just one time. So just the last 3 beads, and that's just going to pull them in a little bit tighter, so it's a little bit easier to add the wire guard. So just go through that last row of the peyote stitch and then pull it tight, and then it should be pretty much closed after that. Then we're going to pick up our wire guard, go through one of the ends of the wire guard, and pull it down to the product, and then go down the other side of the wire guard. And then this is where you're going to choose which bead to go through. So I'm coming out of this bead right here, the one that's on the right hand side of the 3. I'm going to go ahead and go over to the one that's over here on the left. And then those will be my 2 first beads that I go through first. I'm going to go through the 3rd seed bead down here and get myself back over to the first one again. Go up that right hand side of the wire guard one more time. Go down the left hand side of the wire guard, and if you catch on to the seed bead, that's perfectly fine. Go ahead and do that. Try to get that out of the way. I think the camera's trying to focus on the necklace. Then we're going to go back through the wire guard one more time. So we're going to go through that 3rd seed bead. And then now we're going to position our wire guard to where we can actually get to the seed bead, or get to the wire guard a little easier, because we've already gone up and down the wire guard twice. There we go. And then go up it one more time. You should be able to get through this 3 times with your thread that you're using. Depending on the thickness of the thread, you might even be able to get through it 4 times. It is always advisable that when you're using a wire guard and you're using thread, to go through it as many times as your needle and thread will allow you to go through it. Especially on a necklace, and that's only because this is going to be the part that's going to get a lot of wear and tear. And so you don't want your wire guard to start fraying your thread. So now I'm just going back through those 3 seed beads one more time, and just the 3 seed beads. Just like that. And then I'm going to step down into the peyote stitch, 1 row down, and then I'm going to start tying off. To tie off, you want to get your needle up underneath one of the thread bridges, and then pull that down to create a loop, and then go through that loop and pull it down in between 2 beads. We're going to do this 3 times, so I'm going to step down to the next bead in line, and I'm going to create another knot, and just make sure that your knot goes in between 2 beads. I'm going to go through this bead, and I'm going to create, let's see, what bead am I coming out of? There we go. I'm going to create one more knot this way, and then I'm going to go in a different direction with the thread. I'm just making sure I'm going through 1 thread bridge and not 2. So we're going to go through this bead, but we're going to go upwards now. We're going to create 1 more knot, and it's going to be, I believe this is called a surgeon's knot, where you go through it twice. You go through the loop twice. So we're going to go underneath that thread bridge. Then we're going to create our loop like we were doing earlier, without creating a big knot, which I just did. Okay. 1 second while I fix that. There we go. Okay, so create our loop like we just did the first time. Go through that loop once, pull it kind of close to the product a little bit, and then go through that loop 1 more time. So you're going through that loop twice. And then just make sure it goes in between 2 beads. And there you go. So now you're tied off. So now we're going to move a couple of beads away. So I'm going to go up 1 bead, and then I'm going to go down 1 bead, or 1 row, and then down 1 row. And then that's where I'm going to burn off my thread. And then leave about 1/4 to 1/8 of an inch. And just make sure that when you're burning down this little tip into a little ball, that you don't burn in any of your thread bridges, because that would mean that you would have to go back and fix it. Which I have done in the past, many a times. So that's why I say try not to do it. Alrighty, so now our necklace is almost complete. Now I've already made a little bit of an extension. I just used a bunch of jump rings. I used 10 different jump rings. These are, I believe, 6 millimeters. They may be 5 millimeter inner diameters, but they're around a 6 millimeter so jump ring. Then we'll need our lobster clasp. We're going to go ahead and make a head pin. I think I'll do that real quick. First, I'm going to get a couple of seed beads, some of the gold ones, and I ended up having exactly one more of my 6mm beads out. So I'm going to make a little dangle to go on the back of the necklace. I'm going to pick up a seed bead, my 6mm, and another seed bead. I'm going to take my chain nose pliers, and right here, right above the bead itself, I'm going to hold my pliers to where my pliers are just sitting right about the edge of that seed bead, where the edge of my pliers are sitting right about where the edge of the seed bead's at. And then I'm going to bend the pliers, or bend the wire over the plier, like that. Whoops. And then I'm going to find my cutters. Forgot to get those out. And then we're going to measure about 1 centimeter or so away, and then cut that off. Cut off the excess. Then we're going to get the round nose pliers. And I'm going to create just a simple little loop. And I'm going to have a little bit of room in between there. Let's see, how big of a loop do I need to make it? Let's try this. See if that works. And everything's twisting and turning in my hands. But that's okay, we can get this fixed. So that looks okay. It's a little bit looser than I wanted it to be. But I think that will do. It's handmade. What do you say? Especially when you're still kind of learning how to do little loops and dangles and stuff like that. So there it is. We're good. I'm leaving it at that. So now we just need to add our lobster clasp. And oops, let me use the chain nose to do this. I'm just going to pick one of the sides because it really doesn't have a front or a back. And then put the jump ring on, add the lobster to one of those sides, and I was completely off screen. So add the lobster onto the jump ring, and the jump ring is added to one of the wire guards. And then eventually here, I'll get this to close. There we go. Now we got it. Okay. And then we're going to use this other jump ring, and we're going to add the other 10 jump rings that I already have in there for an extender. And it ends up being a little over 1 inch, about 1.25 inches or so, something like that. And then we're going to open up this little head pin that we just made with the little eye. We're going to open that up, and then we're going to just slide this on to the end of the extender chain, just for a little decoration. And then we're going to close that back up. And then now you have a completed Catch the Tiger necklace. Thanks so much for joining me today. I really hope you enjoyed learning how to make the Catch the Tiger necklace and had fun working with these beautiful tiger's eye stones and bead stitches. If you like this tutorial, be sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't already, and hit that bell so that way you don't miss any future videos. Feel free to leave a comment below if you have any questions, or if just let me know how your necklace turned out. I really appreciate reading those comments. So thanks again for watching, everyone. I really appreciate it. I'll see you all in the next video. Bye now.